PingPod do not need a check-in counter person or a assistant manager or manager being on site 24/7. If your space is not being used at any given time, it's just sitting there, and at least you're not paying for someone to physically be there not really doing much. When you open up the economics in that way, at PingPod, we've achieved best-in-class retail or brick-and-mortar margins, especially at our highest performing locations.
Patrick Findaro here, co-founder at Vetted Biz. Excited to have on David Silberman, who's the co-founder of PingPod, as well as leading their franchise growth efforts. David, thanks so much for joining today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So what led you to leave your banking career at UBS to move into the world of ping pong?
Well, I was working and living in New York City in 2019. I had been in the city for a couple of years, and I just looked around and noticed that there were very few places to play ping pong, which is a sport that I had grown up playing and loved playing. So you kind of had your entertainment model out there with lots of alcohol and corporate events, and you had your dojo style basement clubs and not much in between. So I always knew I wanted to start a business, and pursuing something that I am passionate about was too good to pass up. So I met Max and Ernesto, my two co-founders, at the right time, and I told them about my vision for PingPod, and the three of us hit the ground running together.
Were they already ping pong players?
Yeah, so Ernesto is a true professional. He is from the Philippines, six-time Filipino national champion, and then he came to the US on a special talent visa through table tennis and rose the ranks to become the number one table tennis athlete in the US at one point. So he really knows his stuff. He was also the most prolific and sought after coach in New York City. So he had an installed base of people in his network. And Max Kogler is more traditional business background. He spent a lot of time in the hedge fund world. And then more recently, he was the COO of Super Soccer Stars, which is a youth
That's right.
soccer
Franchise system that I think he sold off to a larger group.
That's right. Yeah, he kind of helped turn that business around and get them sold to private equity. And now they are, successful in the franchise world. But by that time, Max had moved on to PingPod with me and Ernesto.
And Max, from what I recall, he also came over from Austria. At some point, he was on an investor visa himself. So you have a serious investor, also talented individual, together with someone that got one of the most exclusive U.S. visas to come here with his talents. So it's a great team that you guys have created.
Yeah, it really is. We have very complementary skill sets, which has been very useful for us.
I mean, it seems so much more than just a studio or lack of a better word, a place to play ping pong, where you guys have a tech play. You started franchising in a responsible manner rather than just having one location and then selling hundreds of licenses. You decided to develop quite a few corporate locations, if I understand.
That's right. We scaled from our first location in the Lower East Side in 2020, right before COVID. We were shut down from COVID like everyone else, but we were one of the first non-essential businesses to reopen in New York City as a result of our contactless nature, which is at the heart of the PingPod business model. So in a lot of ways, we were a beneficiary of COVID, and people really descended upon our business and our brand. And that enabled us to raise money and open more locations, and those locations succeeded and raised some more money. And fast forward to today, we have 20 company-owned locations in the U.S., including two in internationally.
Okay.
And
have you ever closed a location? Like any of the sites just weren't a good fit?
So far, no, thankfully.
Not bad.
Yeah. And we did speak to franchise experts pretty early on in our journey, and we were given the good advice to wait until you have at least 10 company-owned locations open. And we multiplied that by 2 and have waited until we had 20 open. So we really have a solid brand and operating model, and we've made things consistent, and we know what we're doing. And that's what we gained from biding our time and being patient. And now we're ready to really attack the franchising world.
thankfully everything worked out as you went 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20. But it would have been a shame if, your franchisee was number 5 and the location shut down, and then franchisee number 8 shut down. To have an early partner that invests their life savings or takes an SBA loan and fails can be a lot for a young franchise system to swallow. So it's great that you've already got all the places set and you've de-risked the venture thus far.
Absolutely agree.
And what type of franchisees are you looking for? Like, who do you want to be joining the PingPod family?
Yeah, it's super important to us to find partners who are passionate about what we do. So that doesn't necessarily mean passionate about table tennis. It's a nice to have if you have a table tennis background, if you love the sport, you grew up playing. By no means do you need to be Ernesto Ebuin and be the number one rated player in the US. That would make our field pretty small. More important is that you have a penchant for recreation, socialization, sports, fitness, community building. What is paramount for us, first and foremost, is that we find the right franchisee partners and that we are identifying people who are high quality leads, so to speak, who share our enthusiasm for community building and for our core values at PingPod.
I mean, how much are we talking about all in, David, to open up one of these?
Yeah, so the FDD, of course, lays out all of that information at a high level. It can be quite reasonable and affordable to open up a ping pod because we are a very simple concept. We are not a restaurant. We don't have restaurant equipment and expensive ventilation projects to work on. So the key thing that I tout this message all day long, if you can identify a space that already has your heating and ventilation system in place and already has at least one bathroom in good working order, then it really becomes an extremely light, you can hardly call it a construction project after
How many
that.
square feet? What's the range or ideal?
Well, so the way PingPod works is that you can have any form factor between one table and up to 6 tables. So a one table pod, which we have on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, for example, is 750 square feet. That's enough room for your table, a couch, refrigerator, storage, bathroom, and that's all you need. And we have 2 table, 3 table, 4 table, all the way up to 6 table pods. We have every form factor in our company mix. And you don't need to multiply 750 square feet by the number of tables. You can get some economies of scale on that space. So if you have a 6 table pod, you can get away with a 3,200 square foot location. So that's kind of the spacing requirements. Pretty tight, pretty efficient use of square footage. But at PingPod, we value tables having enough space for people to play and not cramming people in like sardines. Like our whole mission is to bring table tennis out of the basement and onto the streets and to give people high quality places to play table tennis.
You have a prime spot in Miami. I remember driving a few weeks back, and it's a great logo. And
Yeah, thank you. We're in Wynwood, Miami, and Brickell,
oh
Miami.
yeah,
So,
that's right, 2 locations. I went by the Wynwood,
yeah,
and I think
yeah,
what was on North Miami Ave, one of the kind of the main streets there.
that's right, North Miami Ave.
And I mean, someone wants to take over the Austin market, Dallas. Like, how would you go about deciding? Okay, open in this wealthy suburb or open in this business district, and let's try to get like a 3 table format. How would you go about that?
So it's really case by case. We are seeking to sell 10 franchise licenses over the next 12 months, and we're being opportunistic in terms of geography around the country. So, what is the most important thing is that we're finding franchisees who we think are the right partners. And then, secondarily, is okay, where are you in the country? And we are preferring urban and densely populated suburban or tier two cities, if you will. Um, and once the franchisee has identified a city or a neighborhood within the city, we partner with a company called Locate AI. So
Oh
we
yeah.
can kind of overlay their specific address or neighborhood into that data platform, and it spits out whether it thinks it's a strong or somewhat strong or weak location vis-a-vis our current company owned locations, which the model has been trained on. And we still need more data for that model to get super strong. So I wouldn't be deterred if it said a somewhat strong location, and then I can overlay my own intuition and I can visit the site. And also, I want to be listening to our franchisees who, once they really understand what PingPod is all about, and maybe they've been to PingPods in one of our locations, and we can tell them more about what really makes a PingPod thrive in terms of demographics and socioeconomics. And they can tell us if they are getting more excited about their location or if they think maybe it's not as good of a fit as I thought.
So you mentioned the real estate aspect, which is huge, helping them using the data as well as just gut instinct, qualitative insights to help them with the location. How else are you supporting the franchisees in opening and growing their business? How will you be, I should say?
Right. So, yeah, to be clear, we are on the verge of selling our first franchise license
That's
in Coral Gables, Florida, literally signing the contract any day. We only announced becoming a franchisor last month. So I think that, we're well
not a
prepared
bad
to.
sales cycle.
Right, right. We've been in touch with this individual for a long time. In fact, he was waiting for us to become a franchisor for years, and he was so
Oh
patient
wow.
with us. So we're extraordinarily excited to partner with our friend and partner in Coral Gables. So we really plan to provide tight support and guidance from soup to nuts. So I will be accessible 24/7 personally, and our corporate team will also be available. And our priority as a team is to really support our franchisees at all costs. So of course, there's standard stuff like our franchisees will visit New York. We'll spend a couple days with them going to the different locations in New York. They will be meeting with key members of our team and will be providing real time training and understanding of how the model works. We will come and visit personally the location, during construction, after construction. And this is especially true for our first 10 or so franchisees. Once we start really scaling and getting going, I can't exactly speak to how things will work, but I can speak to how we intend on conducting business in the near to medium term. And so you will be pleasantly surprised, I hope, in how much guidance you will receive from the team. Of course, every franchisee will receive that standard operating manual with very comprehensive and thoughtful writing on how to operate all the way from site selection, construction, opening, operations and marketing, etc. But outside of that written document, we will be there to support our franchisees with the personal touch.
And I mean, operations seems pretty slick. And from what I understand, you guys have invested a lot of money into the technology backing this, and there's a lot under the hood here.
That's right. So to give people a little bit more of a context and understanding on PingPod, we built the proprietary technology from the ground up. That is the reservation management system. That's the consumer facing side, the back end side, which manages your reservations and your reporting, plus the integrated video monitoring capabilities and instant replay and scoreboard tracking features. So all of these things is our technology system, which we have branded PodPlay. And PodPlay is now its own kind of company and brand. It's a subsidiary business of PingPod, and we are licensing that technology to outside venue operators, namely in the pickleball space. And we've really built best in class software that a lot of other venues, I mean, dozens of outside venues are now running through our system. So that is a signal to our potential franchisees that, wow, this technology is great. You can go on our web app, pingpod.com, click book a table. You can download our iOS and Android apps and kind of see the front end for yourself if you've never been to a PingPod, and you'll see how intuitive and sleek and easy it is to use. And that's because we run autonomous operations, which maybe we can get into that a little bit more. But our system needs to be extremely seamless and simple to use because there are no employees to troubleshoot on site. And so we've really refined a great technology system. The replay and the score tracking technology are some of our kind of our secret sauce in a lot of ways. We've gamified the sport of ping pong and brought it into the 21st century and really innovated, not just for table tennis, but now for sports and recreation at large, because we have all sorts of clients outside of table tennis. But we've made the product, if you will, just that much more engaging. And our community is absolutely obsessed with that instant replay and scoreboard tracking technology. And the beautiful thing about what that does to the business model, all of those replays, which you trigger if you have a great point, they end up on your email in your account profile, and we make it very easy for our end customers to upload to social media. So now we have all of these high definition videos that are water stamped with the PingPod logo floating around the internet and social media. Most recently, we had one of our replays go viral, and right now it's up to 2.7 million views. So talk about user generated content and our customers doing the marketing for us and getting the word out there and showing their friends and family how much fun they have playing ping pong and playing at PingPod.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about the automation. I know talking to Max, he walked it through, but I'd love to hear it for you and our audience.
Yeah, so at the heart of the PingPod concept is that we run without any employees on site during the day. And of course, the PodPlay system, all of our franchisees will receive. That is built into the core of our business model. We've achieved this operating model using a video monitoring team. They're based in Manila, and that's, no surprise. Ernesto has loads of contacts, and we've kind of helped build this separate monitoring company, and they are extremely dedicated, extremely on the ball, 24/7, 365, watching all of our they're like our angels in the sky, and they help oversee everything and help our customers follow protocol. They issue infraction fees if need be, if a customer, for example, is overstaying their time. So lots of people have these basic questions. How does it work? What happens if people stay over? What happens if there's an extra person in the reservation? We've thought about all of that, and that's part of our business model. And our doors are by default locked. So we are just about one of the only retail concepts that you can think of where if you try and just get in, the door is locked. The only way a customer can get in is if they have a reservation. And if they have a reservation, it's because they've put their credit card on file. We have their card on system. And all of these things working in concert prevent bad things from happening. And 5 years into our journey and hundreds of thousands of reservation hours under our belt, we can really feel safe in declaring that we've proven that this business model and operating model is safe and viable. And what it ultimately does is it removes the variable labor cost out of the cost stack. So that's why, unit economics of PingPod are, can be quite attractive.
And I imagine like the video footage helps kind of reduce or eliminate bogus credit card chargebacks. Like I've dealt with that with my businesses, and I've lost thousands of dollars with people disputing a charge that they had no merit to dispute. And usually the credit card companies are siding with the consumer, but I guess you guys could just share the footage and say, hey, there were 4 people. This is our agreement. They signed up for 2.
Yep. That's not what most people usually go to first in their mind, but that is a kind of second order benefit of our business model. And it is true.
So how do these franchisees make money? Could you go through a little bit on the unit level economics?
Yeah. Speaking of kind of the business model and how that translates to unit economics, when you remove that variable labor cost out of the model, in other words, PingPod, you do not need a check-in counter person or a assistant manager or manager being on site 24/7. If your space is not being used at any given time, it's just sitting there, and at least you're not paying for someone to physically be there, not really doing much, especially during off-peak times, for example. So when you open up the economics in that way, at PingPod, we've achieved best in class retail or brick and mortar margins, especially at our highest performing locations. So to give you a little bit of a numerical sense, our highest performing locations in New York and New Jersey achieve 40% plus unit operating margins. And yet, what I will disclose and be transparent about is that if you take a standard 4 table pod, you're not talking about a huge amount of revenue, right? So if you slap 40% against a modest, sub 1 million revenue amount, you're not talking about millions of dollars in operating profit per year. But operating profit is profit. And the way that you can really start to make some serious income through PingPod is if you own a cluster of PingPods in a given city or a region.
And I guess it's pretty intuitive when to open up the next one, because if you're at, a certain utilization rate and you know where people are because of the zip code with the credit card, bookings, you can just open up. All right, let's add this in this cluster.
That's
so it's
right.
not going to monopolize as much.
Yeah, I mean, another thing about the autonomous business model is that it allows a location to be open 24 hours a day. As long as your landlord is cool with it, we have perfected that model and we are absolutely more than cool with it. So you have a higher denominator in terms of capacity. And all you need to get to is about 20% utilization to start to break even or eke out a profit, which is quite achievable in most kind of metro areas around the US. And that's when you kind of start to hit your utilization stride. That's when you might start to think to open your subsequent locations in an area.
How do you get there? Like, what's your go to market? And if you don't mind, like, walking me through what the pipeline looks like from someone's interested in booking to, they're now booking every week or every month or whatever cadence.
So the other beautiful thing about removing variable labor is that you have more budget to spend on rent, let's say. So you can afford to be in perhaps a more premium area of your city or metro area and pay up a little bit for rent. You do not need to be in Times Square. You can be a little bit off the beaten path, and most of our company owned locations are a little bit off the beaten path, but not, you don't need to be, or we don't want you to be totally off the beaten path, kind of somewhere in between. And then the real estate does a lot of the marketing for you. So people passing by, driving by, walking, biking, and then telling their friends. And it's a really novel and interesting and different thing when you see ping pong being played on the ground level or on the second floor. We don't do any basement retail. And it just stands out, right? And you can't help but take a picture and send it to your friend or your colleague who loves ping pong if you don't love it yourself. And then you end up, driving from the Lincoln Tunnel, passing that location, going to Jersey, looking up PingPod, realizing that there's a location in Jersey, going to that location. So it's a real kind of flywheel effect. Plus, we have the instant replays that are going viral and spreading the word on your behalf. In addition to all of those things, we ourselves engage in paid social advertising, and we want to invest in marketing, even if we don't have to as much. We can't rest on our laurels, so to speak. So we do encourage like traditional paid advertising in addition to all of those things that are built into our business model.
David, so I mean, you went through finding the real estate, the marketing, that the operation's relatively simple, but like, how simple is it? What is the franchisee doing day in, day out for that first location and then also subsequent locations?
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons PingPod is such a good fit to be a franchised concept is our simplicity in operations. So as I mentioned before, it's quite simple to build a PingPod. It's not a huge capital outlay. And then when it comes to operations, it's also simple, right? Especially relative to, let's say, your average QSR restaurant, a sandwich restaurant, right? You have to worry about lettuce and tomatoes and bread and inventory management and procurement and food safety and regulations. We toss all of that out, right? And no offense to any other company out there, I love my Jersey Mike's sandwich and I love my hamburger, but this concept, it's really about the technology, the operations, and the product itself, the community. And the technology we make so easy for both the consumer and the franchisee to use. The operations are quite simple, right? You just need to do some basic maintenance and repair and upkeep, but there's nothing, you're not managing a dozen W-2 workers, like there's no turnover, there's no people calling in sick. It's a really beautiful thing in that respect. And that allows the franchisee to be able to focus on what matters, which is the community, the product, the bringing people together, helping people improve on the journey from ping pong to table tennis, thinking about how many community events should I conduct in a given week, what type of events, what type of leagues should I be putting on, should I be focusing on beginners and intermediates, or should I be catering more to the advanced players? How do I think about membership and pricing? By not having to worry about the traditional, day in, day out operations and order management, etc., you can focus your time on the fun part, which is the people and the product. So it's a very compelling aspect of what makes PingPod an interesting franchise option.
And I guess that the community aspect's probably a big reason why you guys decided to franchise, because you could open up more corporate locations, but probably no one's going to care as much as the owner on how the community is and the events and kind of the energy and passion that goes into making that, lack of a better word, dojo, like a really nice place that people want to come back to.
That's such a good point. And I'll give you a quick example. We have a company-owned location in Fort Lee, New Jersey, but we don't have anyone physically overseeing that location. We don't have a general manager. We don't have a specific dedicated franchisee or owner. So that location literally just exists. It's there. It's built. And people know PingPod, and it's so easy to make a reservation. So we built it, and people came. So that location, it does decently well just by virtue of existing. But
Sure.
if you were to put a dedicated owner operator at that location to be
Put a
doing
franchisee
more,
in there.
that may very well be the route we take. Um, but it would just do that much better if you have someone who's physically there more often. And I do want to make an important point also, which is that we're looking for franchisees who want to be physically at PingPod, especially during key times, like during the community events, during peak hours after works when your core community is there. So we are not looking for franchisees who want to take advantage of the autonomous model and just build it, sit back and expect to collect their check. We are looking for engaged franchisees who want to be a part of the community.
Yeah, if not, it's just better to raise debt or equity and just grow a bunch of corporate locations.
That's right.
Now, I have to ask, did you align the launch of the franchise with the Summer Olympics in Paris? I feel like ping pong really stole from a lot of the other sports.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was going to say, going back to your last question, is we take people on the journey from ping pong to table tennis. So, to your last question, if someone walks in and they haven't played in years, they used to play in college or high school, and they get the bug a little bit, right? It's such an addicting sport. They go back, maybe they take a coaching lesson, maybe they come to one of our open plays or community events. Next thing you know, they're buying custom equipment because they want to level up. They are, entering into leagues and tournaments, which we offer at PingPod, and they become a member and they're coming 6 days a week, right? We've seen it time and time again. And it's that journey from ping pong to table tennis, which is at the crux of our lifetime value generation and breeding and fostering community. And then they're meeting people at their level to play with, and they're playing on their own time, like individually with people. And then what the Olympics has done is it's really turbocharged that. So I can't say that we timed our franchise launch in, coinciding with the Olympics, but it certainly is fortuitous timing. And there's such a buzz right now in the table tennis world as a result of the NBA crossover with our women's US players, which are also PingPod sponsor athletes, by the way. We're seeing that in our reservation volume. August and September are usually a little bit seasonal and a little bit weaker. They have been super strong off the backs of this Olympic tailwind. And we wrote a blog about this. The reason we think that this time is different, in other words, in past Olympic cycles, there's been the spike in interest and it's kind of trailed off. This time is different, one, because of PingPod, because there are now 20 locations across the country to play, right? If you and your friend in Chicago caught the Olympic bug, you actually now have someone somewhere in your backyard to go in and play and enjoy the sport. Two, Major League Table Tennis is now in its second year. And so the action continues, right? Now you can continue to watch professional players through MLTT, and you can have somewhere to invest this newfound interest from the Olympics. So these are two big differences that are alive today that were not alive as much or at all 4 years ago. The other exciting thing that's happening is there's a movie being made about table tennis. So the director, Josh Safdie, who directed Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler, he's an A-list director. Everyone wants to work with him. He is doing a movie about Marty Riesman, who is a professional table tennis player in New York City. It's kind of like a mid-century piece. Josh is actually a friend of mine. He comes to PingPod. We've played. I've been talking to him about this movie for years. It's finally been announced and in production. I have friends that are going to be participating in the film. They're still looking for extras. And it's extraordinarily exciting to have this cultural thing happening. And you may know from like the Queen's Gambit effect and some other things that things happening in popular media and movies and Netflix can have a huge impact on the market. So we expect that participation will remain strong, and there's these real tailwinds, and it's kind of never been a better time to get into the business of ping pong.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you guys are making it more visible with the factors that you can control, and then also, just through a lot of different channels, it's being exposed to the larger American public. David, I want to be mindful of your time. If someone's interested in learning more about opening up one of your franchises, what's the best way for them to get more information to see if it could be a good fit?
The best way is to go on our website, pingpod.com. There's a franchise tab at the top of the ribbon. Lots of information on that dedicated franchise webpage. And really, the first step is to submit a franchise inquiry form, and we will reach out to you and have an introductory conversation with you and see if maybe there's a right fit for a partnership.
Awesome, David. I really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.